More than 20 members of Syria's security force have been killed in fighting on Wednesday. This according to the opposition Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. 15 people are reported to have died, including 2 colonels in an ambush near Aleppo. Another 6 are said to have been killed during fighting with rebels near the capital, Damascus. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch is releasing a report accusing Syria's armed forces of war crimes. The report focuses on Idlib province. It describes how President Bashar al-Assad was negotiating peace while allegedly launching attacks at the same time. Steve Chao has more.
That President Bashar al-Assad and his forces were simply buying time with the peace plan to suppress the opposition is an accusation long alleged by activists. Now, according to Human Rights Watch, there is proof. In late March, as UN and Arab League envoy Kofi Annan was caught up in negotiations with the Syrian government, the group says Syrian forces were engaged in a 2-week offensive in the northern province of Idlib. Hundreds of homes were burned, at least 95 civilians systematically murdered.
In several of the cases that we have documented, government forces entered the homes of people. They questioned them, they checked their identification, and in some cases then took them back out on the street, or they lined them up inside the house and shot them in the back of the heads.
Security forces killed 19 members of the Ghazal family. One survivor gave her account.
طلعت ولا بنتي صف 10 لاني جيت على 10 قلت لي يا امي يا اخواتي يا امي اخواتي انا ما صدقتها ضربتها هيك ضربتها بالبكره بالبسط المي ضربتها هيك على وجهها قلت لها فوتي ليش طالعك وراي قالت ما بعرف طلعنا ولا اخواتي اثنين شطاحين مقوس واحد بلال هون مقوس ومحروق ويوسف مقوس ومحروق.
Al Jazeera visited the region just days after the military offensive. Villagers in the town of Taftanaz showed us the destruction and also the numbers of dead. Human Rights Watch is calling for an international investigation to punish those responsible. Their evidence suggesting the government had been negotiating in bad faith. And the peace plan was undermined long before UN monitors began arriving in Syria. Steve Chao, Al Jazeera.
Well, joining us now from the United Nations headquarters in New York is Radhika Kumaraswamy. She is the UN Special Representative on Children and Armed Conflict. Thank you very much for speaking to Al Jazeera. First off, before you tell us about how children have been affected by this conflict, just your reaction to this report by Human Rights Watch about the alleged war crimes committed in Syria. Do you think the Syrian regime is serious about wanting peace?
Well, I hope so, but I must say that with regard to the events before the beginning of the truce and the ceasefire, I must say that we have sent a technical team to interview people who are in the refugee camps in the region, and we do find quite a systematic commitment of crimes, I must say especially against children. We have found not only the killing of children, but also the torture of children, as well as attacks on schools and hospitals. So we really do feel that there is a basis to say that there is systematic crimes against children.
Yes, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, 13 children have been killed since the truce was agreed, and despite the presence of UN monitors, that number must be much higher since the conflict began over a year ago. What have you been able to uncover as far as how children in Syria have been affected by this crisis?
Well, our figures are that 34 children have been killed since the truce. At least that is from the local committees that are reporting to us. Until I know, we kept figures till the beginning of April. There were at least 400 killed and 400 detained by the beginning of April. So we are very worried. This war has had a very devastating effect on children, much more than many other conflicts that are similar. And especially we are worried about 2 phenomena. That is the children in detention and the torture that takes place in detention. We have eyewitnesses accounts of that. but also of children being used as human shields in many parts where they're put on tanks and taken around so that the tanks are not attacked. So we are deeply concerned about what is happening to children.
So
and
you're
now,
deeply
of course,
concerned,
suicide
Mr.
bombings,
Komarasamy. If I could just interrupt you for a second. You say you're deeply concerned, and that's understandable. But what are you, as the Special Envoy for Children, doing to address this? What are you doing to help the most vulnerable who have been affected by this conflict?
Well, what we're first trying to do now is to just try and record what is taking place, so that if there is a future inquiry or what is, we hope, some international action, that we can respond. So as I said, I sent a technical team to take down evidence from eyewitnesses. The annual report of the Secretary-General on Children in Armed Conflict will have a big section on Syria with the specific reporting. And secondly, we are hoping to put child protection people with the monitors, UN monitors, to go there to make sure that there is protection of children as part of the whole monitoring exercise. And we're also sending someone on the Commission of Inquiry. Somebody from my office will be seconded there to gather information. So the purpose now is first to gather information, and secondly to appeal to all parties, because at the moment now both sides, as you know, because the suicide bombing are having violence and breaking the truce, to just stop this violence. It's just absolutely crucial.
But neither side seems to be hearing that. Nothing done to date, Ms. Komarasamy, seems to be working in Syria. Isn't it time for the international community to consider other options? Isn't it time perhaps to consider Chapter 7 of the UN Charter to protect civilians, to protect the children that you've mentioned?
Well, I think there are many people who feel that the time is right, but it is, as you know, Chapter 7 requires the full vote of the Security Council and no vetoes by any member of the Council. So I think people are being realistic at the moment. What can be done realistically in what we have at the moment? And so at the moment it is appeal and trying to put maximum pressure on the Syrian government to stop this rubbish. And also to try and record what is happening. But I agree with you. We all feel that there should be firm action taken.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us. Radhika Komarasamy, the UN Special Envoy for Children in Armed Conflicts, joining us there live from New York. Thank you very much for your time.